All right, guys. So we have a good podcast for you guys today. For those of you all watching, Maverick Times podcast. This is number 29. We're sitting down with Kinney County attorney Brent Smith. He's one of the ones we showed you pictures of a bill that is being proposed right now at the Texas House by Representative Spiller, and it is a bill that is going to compel local law enforcement agencies to assist with immigration enforcement. Uh, Brent Smith, I'll go ahead and county attorney, Kinney County attorney. I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself real quick, and we'll dive into some of these questions about this bill.
Sure, Isaac. Yeah, I'm Kinney County attorney. We I took office the same day Biden did, unfortunately, and we've been, Isaac and we both been pretty deep in Operation Lone Star from day one. And Kinney County, for those that don't know, is right next to Maverick County. We're in between Eagle Pass and Del Rio, essentially. And anyway, there's a bill that's been filed and by Representative Spiller, and it's a powerful tool for law enforcement for the state of Texas. But I'll let you start off. You can introduce the bill and whatever you want to say about it, and we can jump into the weeds if you want.
Sure, sure. So the bill that got the Immigration Law Enforcement Agreement bill, right? It's going to be HB 2361. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
so.
Just wanted to make sure we got that. So Rep. David Spiller filed this, and pretty much what it's doing is you're going to have to register, submit an application, and it's going to be expected of local law enforcement agency to designate some officers, some deputies to assist with the immigration enforcement. So, it's an interesting thing because this is something that has not been done before, right? So you've been a part of this. I know, you've been on the show before. We've had discussions about the border. You're a strong, supporter of border security down here. I know Kinney County does see its share of incidents that go through. But what do you see? Can you give us a sense of
Yeah,
maybe?
let me give a little feed like background. So the 287G, a lot of people don't know what it is. So in the Immigration Nationalities Act, which is a federal statute, there's a paragraph 287G, and in that paragraph, it allows the Secretary of Homeland Security to delegate certain immigration enforcement authorities to local state jurisdictions for law enforcement. And so you'll have Border Patrol and state law enforcement working side by side, vested with the same authorities for the most part as each other. I mean, now they're basically operating under an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding. Like it grants authorities to different law enforcement to complete certain tasks. And, in that they have to go through anyone that's certified state law enforcement has to go through some training certification. Like they get like a speed course in enforcement of immigration laws. It's not like if you're the sheriff and you have like 12 deputies that all 12 are automatically authorized. It's out of those 12, which ones go to the, short seminar training, get a brief introduction to immigration enforcement, and then they're pretty much certified to then enforce immigration laws just like a Border Patrol agent can. But a lot of people get caught up because if you go up to 287G and you look up the DH website, there's two different programs currently offered, and really it has to do with like jail enforcement or jailing, processing legal aliens, or doing something of that nature. Those two programs on the website are really what Biden allowed. That's kind of basically they allowed states for over capacity to jail people, but the 287G is not limited to just that authority. It's really anything the DHS secretary deems appropriate to delegate. And if you go back to before Obama, there were several sheriffs that apprehended, investigated, detained, and even transported illegal aliens right up to the border and facilitated their deportation. And so that's why this bill I think is important, because what President Trump is trying to do is going to require a lot more personnel that's currently in DHS. They're not going to be able to. They don't have enough boots on the ground to make the apprehensions that they need to. Even if they got $20 million to hire agents, you're looking at a year and a half of recruitment, training, graduating classes to get those people on the ground. But through the 287G programs, they can use existing state law enforcement through a very brief training period to then be able to utilize them. And that's what we're kind of looking at.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds a lot similar like some other grant programs that are already in play in the state. You got Operation Stone Garden that it sounds pretty similar there, where they'll be able to actually use a certain group, like you said, that has maybe a certification type or has gone through some kind of training to help and assist, Border Patrol or federal law enforcement immigration enforcement agencies in apprehending some of these people that come over illegally. Now, how is this directly a benefit? I understand Maverick County, we have a lot more significant people than Kinney County, but you guys, I think, had a lot of stuff happen through there. And sometimes you guys may have gotten, overwhelmed. The cases, how would you compare the cases to how it was before, prior to, I would say, Biden, to what Biden is or what it was during Biden? And what do you expect if this bill is passed? Do you think that will help a lot more than what is right now in place? Because, I mean, it sounds like those are some of the mechanisms that we have now with, again, Operation Stone Garden, the local border security program grant. I know Maverick County utilizes those, but what's your opinion on that?
So, I mean, before, Biden took office, I wasn't the county attorney then, but I mean, I've looked at the stats and, we would have, I think, about 200 criminal charges per year. Like, it was a very slow county. We have 2,500 residents in the county, and half of them live in town, half of them live on ranches and farms. Once I took office, the next year, we had over 3,000 really quick. And currently, my office is dealing with about 6,000 cases for just border-related, criminal trespass. But those are state crimes. Even with Operation Stone Garden, it's a federal grant fund, as you know, that comes down. But they assist in certain border enforcement provisions. But it's still including state law. It's not, they're not necessarily arresting people for federal violations of certain things. And so, with a 287G in place, say, our sheriff, for instance, he might have 3 or 4 deputies that are certified under it to assist Border Patrol. And with like a rural county, if they encounter somebody that, they believe that might be here illegally, they have the authority and the training to ask them the proper questions to determine citizenship status or reach out to their ICE supervising agent to determine all those things. And it basically takes a workload from Border Patrol and places it in the state law enforcement area to where it's spread out, so to speak. And the other thing that's pretty unique about it is, probably, people that are here illegally, their interaction with law enforcement, probably 90% of their interaction is with state law enforcement, not federal, on a day-to-day basis. And so that would really open up the amount of people who are encountered by law enforcement and able to be questioned and possibly processed for deportation if they're here illegally. So it would really help DHS and ICE, secure the state and the nation. And as you know, and living in Maverick, there's really 2 different aspects of border security, right? You have the river of them crossing. You have to secure that. That's one operation. But then the other is the interior. You're talking Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, all over the state. That's the much harder mission. I mean, making sure anyone comes across the river, even though Biden acted like it was a hard mission, if you get down to it, it's much easier than the interior enforcement and securing everything. And now, across the nation, we have cartels embedded in almost every community with, sophisticated communications and relationships that they use with each other. It's going to be much more difficult to secure the homeland versus securing the border. To me, those are 2 different missions that you need 2 different sets of tools to deal with. And, I know Border Patrol and the military are ramping up on the border right now, and it seems like they're doing a pretty good job. Our arrest numbers have gone down, but I think the interior enforcement is where you're going to see the hurdles that we have to clear going to be much harder. I mean, for instance, cartels, yes, they do deal in illegal drugs, illegal, sex crimes, trafficking, but they also buy legitimate businesses to conduct those things. So it's not like, they have a flag on or a pin that says cartel walking around. They might own 2 car dealerships in the state that are legitimately owned for the purpose of printing paper license plates to avoid license plate readers in their operation. So it's a much more sophisticated mission than securing the border, and that's where you need really all hands on deck. And because I think too many legislators think, well, Trump's elected, we know the border's secure now. Just because he's elected doesn't mean the border's secure. There work has to go into it to actually get it secure. And it's not just the border, like I just said. It's also the nation. When's the last time before Biden? I don't recall, cartels operating in Wyoming and Colorado and everywhere else. They've infiltrated this nation, and it's going to be a task in front of us to root them out. And we don't have a choice. We'll continue to have people die from cartel operations unless we confront and root them out and prevent them from operating inside the United States. And so the bill that's been filed, what it basically does, it says, look, we can't force you to help ICE, but if you don't, their taxpayer dollars aren't going to fund your sanctuary jurisdiction through state grants. You're not going to be eligible to receive state grants. And in fact, I think it was today, or my day's confused, but Pam Bondi, the AG just took office, she issued an order where all federal grant funding will now cease to going to sanctuary cities. So until they start cooperating with ICE, they won't receive federal funding. And so this bill does a lot of the same like that. It basically says, if you're not going to help us secure our nation, you're not going to receive state tax dollars and grant funding. You're going to have to put a price on your political stance, and we'll see how much it costs you. So that's kind of what the aim of the bill is.
So one thing I did notice is that, so you're going to have local law enforcement enforcing these immigration right enforcement. Do you think that would take the place of right now that we have the state out there, the DPS agents? Do you think that might be a step in that direction, or is it just to bolster up the federal? Because I know our state, I mean, Governor Abbott has done a great job in helping out where Biden has, not been there, right? But so moving forward with moving these pieces in there, getting buy-in from border communities to put these deputies on there, kind of wiggling the grant funds in front of their face for compliance. Do you think that the state will kind of pull back their agents, or will they still keep them troopers out there to even maximize more of the border?
I think they will to keep the troopers out there. In fact, the 287G agreements can be entered through state agencies, like DPS can enter as well. Oh, and they can have, DPS, it can enter them. I mean, the National Guard can, to some degree, enter them through the governors. In fact, I think Governor Abbott's already authorized some of the National Guard with limited enforcement for immigration. Because what it does, Isaac, is like if you have a DPS troop or say any state law enforcement on the border or somewhere, and they apprehend someone that's here illegally, they then have to call Border Patrol to come and process them and take them, transport them. So that's pulling a Border Patrol agent off the line to do that task. Versus if he's certified under 287G, he can do that task himself and not have to call Border Patrol from somewhere else and keep that resource still engaged, if that makes sense. So I think you're going to see it's a bigger tool set than the state has or had. DPS troopers and state law enforcement will just have additional tools they can use for law enforcement, and it'll save money in the long run. And I honestly think that there's going to be a lot of federal grant funding coming through Stone Garden to help implement these type of things. It just makes sense, and that's what I've been hearing is the Stone Garden is going to be re-implemented and retooled for using 287Gs. So it's going to be, I think it's going to save money all around for taxpayers, and it's going to increase the safety and security of not only Texans, but the United States.
Well, I mean, listening to how you're explaining it, it seems that it would streamline the whole operation. With, of course, you don't want to move any critical assets that you have in place for border protection to take care of. I know that was a big issue. Whenever they pulled them from the field to be, filling out the tickets or processing the immigrants that came over, the illegals, That was a big thing, and we didn't have any border patrols on out in the field. So that's with this in place, we're not going to have to worry about agents not being on the field. They're going to stay on the field, and we're going to have our locals take care, streamline that process, and like you said, save taxpayers funding with that time of savings.
Yeah, and you know, there I know there's some concerns by from smaller counties saying, well, we can't absorb the cost of this, you know, implementing these programs. But in reality, you know, the housing of illegal aliens is reimbursed through the federal government if you house them. So they're not going to be losing money. In fact, you know, they'll be making money housing legal aliens on behalf of DHS or ICE. And you know the training certification program, you know, you're looking at some minimal cost. I mean, it's going to be, you know, them traveling to get training, and you know, and if the training, I think it's like 5 or 6 days probably. I'm not sure. They haven't come out with some of the specifics of the program, but and the other thing is law enforcement can enter into a 287G agreement and then only participate as much as they can as and the resources allow them to. Just because they enter one doesn't mean that they have to do X, Y, Z, and they have to assign this much personnel. It's basically, you know, do what you can when you can. And so it's just, you know, it's not a mandate necessarily. It's a cooperation agreement saying, look, we know you have limited resources, and you know, do what you can with the resources you have. And oh, by the way, you'll also be probably eligible to receive federal funding to hire more deputies if you enter this agreement to help us. So I don't think the funding will be necessarily an issue, but I think you'll see some counties push back on it, saying we don't have the funding and this and that to do it. You know, in my opinion, they're just excuses. There's ways to do it, and there's funding out there that makes it possible. And saying you can't when you can is just not a good excuse, I don't think.
Yeah, and I know that our border here, especially the Kinney, Maverick, Valverde, we've gotten some stuff that we've never seen. I think in a lot of our lifetimes, right? And it's we had, I don't know if you want to kind of express about it. We had the county sheriff kind of make some comments over the situation as well. Maybe misquoted, maybe misinterpreted, but do you think that any type of comments, not specifically the sheriff, but comments like that, could those things be at putting grants at risk?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, and who's to say that the federal government won't come out with a rule stating unless you participate in 287G, you won't be eligible for stone guarding. You know, and for those that don't know, stone guarding grants a federal funded grant. Operation Lone Star grants a state funded grant. You know, they could just come out and say, unless you know, help DHS and ICE in the enforcement of immigration law, you will no longer receive stone guarding. I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen, but they very well could. Pam Bondi already did that with sanctuary cities on receiving federal funds. So I think, you know, it's a carrot and stick issue. And you know, and if you when it comes down to it, if you don't have uniform enforcement of immigration laws or even any type of law, you're going to have pockets of criminals that stay in your jurisdiction as a safe haven. You know, that's one of the main reasons with Operation Lone Star, I signed up to prosecute as many as I could, as fast as we could, because when you enforce the law and you create a deterrence, they don't want to be in your county. They don't want to be in your jurisdiction. They'll go somewhere else where they won't have jail time. So you have to actually enforce the law for people to follow it. It's, you know, it's kind of common sense, but that's at the end of the day, that's what it is.
No, yeah, and I wonder, how does your county receive this thing going on, like the bill? Are they in supportive of the bill? The sheriff down there, or do they want this to go through? Are they supportive? Do they want it to make it happen? Have
Yeah,
you spoken to any of the border counties about it too?
I'm talking to several counties about it, some border counties, but other interior counties, you know, like Goliad County and other ones like that. You know, they're all for it. I haven't personally talked to anyone that's against it. You know, I know there's a competing bill out there right now that's somewhat similar to this, but it only has a mandate if the population of the county is over 250,000. And to me, that's I don't understand the logic in that, because you're going to have pockets of not being implemented. Border Patrol is going to have help in this county, but then not this county, or ICE. You know, it's really a contract with ICE, but like you need uniform support and help in all of the counties. Texas, it's not I don't like relying on the federal government to protect our own state. We need to work together to do it. It's our job as well. It's not just the federal government's job. We need to secure our state with their help. It's a team effort. And I think, having conditions on which counties have to do it and which counties don't, in the long run, I think it's going to produce bad results. And so some of the sheriffs I've spoken to about this, I haven't spoken to one that dislikes it, but I'm sure there will be some. I just, or if they dislike it, they haven't told me.
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense what you say about the pockets of non-enforcement. And I think that that's really a potentially a place where, how you say people hide out where there's no enforcement, and you're really not protected where there is enforcement, because those people can easily, cross over here or do something over here in close proximity, right? With those pockets. Let's say if Maverick County doesn't participate, I mean, you guys are still going to get, what's left in Maverick County, what's going on in Maverick County is going to trickle down over to Kinney County and the other surrounding counties. And
right.
You're saying everything's pretty much connected. And then the interior is also, being affected as this goes on, right? Because of the pocket enforcement, there's no people making sure things are not happening. And there's no, thing we're not accessible to any type of terrorism or any type, because I mean that's what we've been seeing with some of the people that cross illegally into our country. They don't come over here to do good things.
Right. I mean, and it's a sad situation, but you have to look at examples of what we've been through. Look at Laken Riley. If New York would not have been a sanctuary city, that illegal alien would have never been free to murder her. The same logic applies to what we're talking about now. If you're going to have a jurisdiction that's not going to help ICE and Border Patrol, that same fact pattern can occur over and over again, and it can result in people dying. We've seen it. It's happened across the country. So to me, it's a no-brainer. If there's a good possibility of implementing something like this saves lives, why not do it? It makes us safer. I guarantee you people's lives will be saved by doing this. And, in fact, I've been in communication with some other states. They're also going to pass the same not identical, because the local government codes will be different, but there are several states that are going to likely. So everyone realizes it's a good idea to do it. I think, Kansas, Arizona, Missouri, Oklahoma, a lot of those states are in the process of getting this bill in front of the legislatures and getting it passed. So it won't be only Texas, it'll be other states as well.
So now that we're talking about Texas, the Texas House is, I know there's been very interesting news coming out from there. They just named a new speaker there that, if you go by the voting, a lot of Democrats helped get elected. Sometimes these border bills have issues going up. Do you see anything kind of pushback on these? Do you see it being changed in any way? Because this obviously sounds like a good bill to pass. I mean, looking from the outside, obviously it would benefit a lot more not putting a population standard to it, because then you leave out the smaller communities that actually need more support than the bigger ones.
Yeah, I do have some concerns about the Texas State Legislature this session, because from what I've seen so far, they're not getting their act together. I don't think they prioritize what needs to be prioritized. From what I hear, a lot of the legislators are like, well, Trump's elected, we don't need to do border security, and we don't need to look ahead. It seems like the legislators don't look ahead more than a month at a time. God forbid, but I don't want to be in the same scenario where we are now with what Maverick County and Kinney County went through. I don't want to go through this again. And eventually, God forbid, we'll have another liberal president who will try to do the same thing. We need some laws in place in Texas that'll help us next go around. I think you and I both agree, like, we had to really scrap together resources and think outside the box to protect our counties when this occurred. We didn't have, great laws for border enforcement ready to go when the crisis occurred. And now that we have Trump in office, and we know what we need to do, we need to pass some state laws that will give us the tools we need, not if, but when it happens again with another president. Trump, he's only going to be there one term. Hopefully, J.D. Vance or someone else like him will be there for the second. But eventually, we'll likely have another Democrat president, and we have to safeguard Texas from not having to go through this again. So I'm holding out hope with the Texas legislature, but they're pretty frustrating. They have one job, but they find all kinds of ways not to do it, and it's amazing. I can't believe how inefficient a group of people are, but the Texas state legislature is pretty inefficient. And I mean, there's good ones in there, but I think people need to get their priorities straight and remember who they serve, who voted them in, and who their loyalties are to. I think that's a big problem in Austin.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more on that one. So what would you think, or if anybody else wants to support this bill, out there watching right now, or who's going to watch this later on, if they want to support this bill, they like what they hear, they think local law enforcement should be helping, is there any way that they can reach out, or who do they reach out to support this bill, and so we can get something passed, and hopefully this does support the mission here, and it's protecting our border where we're from?
I would suggest, you contact everyone, but you start local. Contact your county judge, your county attorney, your sheriff. Tell them that, you saw this bill, you think it's a good idea, and then work your way up. Go to your state rep and call him and say, you support this bill. And then, call other people in the legislature and tell them you support this bill. And, I know a lot of people hate driving to Austin. It's not fun, but, there likely be a committee hearing with public testimony. Sign up for public testimony. Go there and give your testimony of why you like this bill. Or if you can't go, you can always sign up and give your written testimony. You submit it online when it has a hearing. And, the legislators in that committee will read your testimony, your written testimony. But, I think too many times when I've gone to Austin to testify, it's usually the anti-border people that show up in person and testify, even though they're the minority. Not as many people that are pro-security, pro-law enforcement show up to testify. And I think that's a problem. I think people don't need to assume someone else is going to do it. They need to do it themselves and not rely on someone else. So I would say contact everyone you can. Anyone that you elect or who is accountable to you, contact them. I mean, it starts local and you just work your way up. I think it's definitely something we need to do. And it doesn't even hurt contacting your federal representative, because there's going to be federal legislation that's going to be passed soon that's probably going to impact us a lot in these type of things. So I would suggest not limiting it to contacting someone specifically, but contact them all. Set aside an hour each day for a couple of days and just do that. And the more people that do it, the more chances we'll have good laws like this passed.
Yeah, great. That's a good idea. Thanks. I appreciate that. Well, we won't keep you that much longer, Brent. We appreciate it. I know it was a little last minute, this podcast, but we saw that you shared out that bill, and we thought it was very important to reach out to you and kind of inform everybody, especially, here in the border, what this bill's about and what they can do, and the good stuff that some people are doing out there to protect the border and keep everybody safe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important we look ahead and, more than a month ahead of time. And so, a bill like this kind of sets the tone for the future. And, we have to, now that we're getting the border secure, we have got to figure out a way to secure the homeland and the interior. And the only way to do that is having more law enforcement help with ICE and DHS and Trump's administration. Logistically speaking, there's no way DHS can do this alone. They have to have local law enforcement. That's a fact. So this is the only way that I see. It's already in place. The 287G agreements, it's law. It's been used for decades. And we just need to find out the best way to implement it in the state of Texas. And I think this bill does that.
Awesome. Well, again, appreciate your time, and we'll be catching up, and we'll be following this bill, and we'll hopefully we can have you on again once we see this passed or not passed, or we'll see what happens at the House.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Isaac.
All right. Thank you, man. You have a good
All right,
night.
we'll see you.